Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today is Friday, August the 18th. Can you believe it? We almost out of August. And so I want to go right into the message that God gave me on today. And the title of my message today is It's Going to Take Courage. It's going to take courage. And so I just want to start off by saying again that we are going to have courage, not only to obtain the things of God, the promises of God, but also to remain steadfast in our faith in the days ahead, because we know that the days are getting darker and darker and darker, because these are the last days. And so it's got to get to the point where you know that you know that you know that God is on your side and that God is with you. And that when God makes you a promise, it's going to happen. It's going to come to pass. And so we're going to have to learn to walk by faith and not by sight, because a lot of times when we look at what we see, a lot of times what God has told you looks totally contrary to what he said. A lot of times it's going to look like that. That's why we can't look at what we see, but we have to go by what God said. What did God say to you? And also, I want to talk about Joshua. In the book of Joshua, the first chapter, immediately God begins to encourage Joshua and tell Joshua to take courage, because now Joshua was going to be the person to lead the children of Israel unto the promised land, because now Moses was gone. And so why did God encourage him? Because he knew that they were going to have to war and fight to obtain what God had, as he said from the beginning, he had already given them the promise. But it makes you think, why did God allow them to fight, to have to fight for what was already theirs? Because God could have just killed all the people in the land without them having to lift a finger. Because if you go to other books of the Bible, God actually did kill people without his people having to do anything. But God wanted them to fight to obtain the promise. And then I just thought about the scripture in Romans 15:4, which says, whatsoever things were written for our learning, that we through comfort, patience, and comfort of the scriptures might have hope. And so when we read about what happened to them, we know that they fight. It was a fight. They were not just fighting just to be fighting, but they were fighting for a reason. And it could have been for several reasons. First of all, in Deuteronomy, the 8th chapter, it talks about how God, he proved them in the wilderness. He proved them in the wilderness. So I want to read what it said in Deuteronomy 8:2. He proved them in the wilderness. And you know what? The wilderness is what prepares you, because all of us have to go through a wilderness. As we walk with God. And the wilderness is what prepares you for the fight. It prepares you to be ready to obtain the promise. And a lot of people want to bypass that and just get the promise. But all of it, everything we go through is preparing us for the next thing. Okay, Deuteronomy, the 8th chapter. And for anyone that's following along with me, I read out of the King James Version. And in it says, In that second and third verse, it says, and thou shalt remember all the way which the Lord thy God led thee these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble thee and to prove thee, to know what was in thy heart, whether thou wouldest keep his commandments or no. And he humbled thee and suffered thee to hunger and fed thee with manna, which thou knewest not, neither did thy fathers know, that he might make thee to know that man doeth not live by bread only, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Lord doeth man live. Just as I was saying about before, that we can't go by what we see, but what God said. What did God say? So he was proving them because he wanted to know would they continue to trust him, and would they also continue to obey him. And then also, we know that the trials that and the tests that we go to, they come, it's a test and trials come to make us strong. So when you go through testing and you go through different trials with God, it makes you stronger. It makes you stronger. And then I also read that God tests his people. So that it says that the fight allowed the people of God the capacity for war to defend themselves and to exist in that region. Because, it talks about how God was giving them cities greater, 7 cities that was greater than them. Because in the land that they were going into, these were a land where the people were giants. They were large in stature. And so that was intimidating, because the last people, because Joshua then went in, but 40 years before, they sent the children of Israel in, and they lost out on enjoying the promised land because they were intimidated by the size of the people, when God had already told them that he would defeat their enemies and that the land was theirs, but they were afraid. And so it caused them to linger in the wilderness 40 years when it only supposed to have been 40 days. And if you think about it, when God has us going through, it's so that we can be able to, once we obtain the promise, to be able to keep the promises of God. Because you think about how, if God could have gave it to us easy, if he just decide to give us things easy, a lot of times we don't appreciate things. You think about how you give your kids, so many kids are entitled today, because basically they get everything that they want. The parents try to make up for what they don't have, and so basically they overcompensate and give them too much, and then now they don't appreciate anything, because so many of them into the name brands and all that. But I grew up in a different generation, because you think about the cars that the young people driving, teenagers driving brand new cars. And when I was growing up, you was glad if you got a hoopty or a piece of car to drive. You was happy with that and content with it. But now they don't even want to drive a car if it's like a couple of years old, because they entitled. Then most of the time, the teenagers don't even know how to drive. And so it's not a good decision to just start off giving them a brand new car. Because I know a couple of teenagers that got cars, and then about a couple of months later, they done tore up the brand new car. But God has a reason why he lets us endure things and go through things, because you appreciate things more. A lot of times when you work for it, you appreciate it more than it's just given to you. And so that's how we would be just spoiled kids if God just gave us everything. So it's many reasons why he allows us to go through and to fight. And it also talks about how God wanted to reveal his character on a national and international stage. And you think about today, God is doing it even today. He wants his people to be You know, he wants to put them on the stage, meaning so they can be seen, so that God can show himself strong through his people to this world. You know, that he is God. God still exists today. God is still working in his people's life right today. And so I want to read in Joshua. I want to read Joshua, the first chapter. And I want to read 1 through 7. 1 through 7. And it says, "Now after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spake unto Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying, Moses my servant is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all this people, into the land which I do give them, even to the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon, even unto the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and unto the great sea toward the going down of the sun, shall be your coast. There shall not any man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so will I be with thee. I will not fail thee nor forsake thee. Be strong and of good courage, for unto this people shalt thou divide for an inheritance the land which I swore unto thy fathers to give them. Only be thou strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded thee. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that thou mayest prosper wheresoever thou goest." And also I want to read in Joshua 2, I want to read Joshua 2:11, because God, he repeated over and over to Joshua to take courage. He wanted him to be courageous. And it says, and as soon as we had, it's Joshua 2:11. Let me make sure I'm reading the right thing. Yes, as soon as we had heard these things, and this was the enemy, letting them know that God had already put fear in their enemies on the other side. He had already prepared them to overtake the enemies, because the enemies was fearing them for what God had already done. And it says, as soon as we had heard these things, our hearts did melt. Neither did there remain any more courage in any man because of you, for the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and in earth beneath. And so they had nothing to fear. So that means a lot of times when we fearful about things, God done already worked that thing out on the other side. But that's how we are a lot of times. We be in fear to take that step. When God is giving us direction about something. But if he's telling you to go, that means he's already worked it out. And then see, I want to say too, that a lot of times when we become new Christians, a lot of times immediately the devil begins to attack us, to try to separate us, from that new walk in Christ, by just coming in like a flood, because, when you was walking in darkness with him, it was all right. Even though God, a lot of times, the devil is trying to destroy you even before salvation. But a lot of times you just can't see certain things. But a lot of times people notice immediately that they are under attack as soon as they become a new Christian, because see, now you are crossed over to the other side, and the devil is trying to draw you back into the world. And so a lot of times when people come under attack, they don't understand. So a lot of times people begin to draw back from God, and then eventually they go back into the world, because they like, why am I going through? Because a lot of times people think once you get saved, everything is going to be peaches and cream. It's all good. It's going to be all good. But a lot of times that's when the real fight begins. Because the devil don't want you to go with God. He wants you to stay under his influence. And so I just remember when I became a new Christian, and I immediately knew something was going on, and I didn't quite understand either, because sometimes I have heard that a lot of times the devil don't really attack the new Christians because they knew. But for me, my situation was totally different. The devil was trying to take me out. I mean, he was attacking everything. When I say he came in like a flood, he came in like a flood. And I mean, he was attacking everything. Immediately when I gave my life to God. But I just knew, you know what, I just held on to God, because I knew that God had been there for me the whole time. Even when I wasn't living for him, I knew that God was with me. And I just held on to God through all of it. And I can tell you, it was a time when I had separated from my husband. And we was living in a house at that time. So then that means all the bills was now on me. So bills was coming in. Then I was being attacked on my job. I had this new boss, and the new boss, I guess he had a crush on me or whatever, and so he was giving me big time problems. Every day when I went in, I was basically being attacked by him. So I didn't have no peace on my job. When I went home, I didn't have peace. And then on top of that, he started attacking my kids. He started attacking my grandkids. I went to the emergency room 9 times in a row. When I say not in a little space of time, it was back to back to back. That this was not a normal attack. First, my daughter that has autism, her eyes swole up. I don't know if she had an allergic reaction or something. I mean, to the point where her eyes was closed. They were so puffy. You couldn't even see her eyes. You couldn't even see the pupils. None of that. And then her thumb swelled up because she sucks her thumb. So her thumb was infected. It was large. I had to go back for that. Then my oldest daughter, she got a staph infection in her side. A month later, she got a staph infection again in that same side. Then my grandson, he kept getting these things in his eyes, these little stars. So we had to take him to the emergency room, and they popped them. Then on top of that, he ended up having bronchitis, or it was asthma, and they had to hospitalize him. Then my granddaughter, she had pneumonia. All these things was happening back to back. Then I was getting tickets on my car. Never got tickets before. I was getting tickets. I mean, when I say the devil was attacking everything, he was attacking everything. It got to the point where it was so much pressure that I couldn't even remember stuff. Because it was so much happening at one time. It was like I turned to the left, it was an attack. I turned to the right, he was everywhere, attacking everything, trying to make me, I guess, turn away from God. But it didn't work. I just held on to God until basically God brought me through that thing. He brought me through. And when I came out of that trial on the other side, I was much stronger. You be thinking the trial going to destroy you, but the trial just made me stronger. The word in 1 Corinthians 10:13, it says, there is no temptation taking you, but such is common to man. But God is faithful and will not suffer you to be tempted above that you are able, but will with the temptation make a way of escape, that you shall be able to bear it. To bear it. So God, he always makes a way out of it. And when you come out, like it says, God is showing his character. You will see what kind of God you serve, because a lot of times God works in your problems. And that's when he really shows himself, to you who he is. And so it made me come out with a stronger faith and and then I became a stronger person as well. Because the fight, as I said, it says that the tests and trials come to make you strong. And I know that to be true in my own life. And so when the devil starts attacking you, I'm talking to the new Christians, the baby saints, hold on, because when you come out of that thing, most likely it's something going to change about you. And you'll have a more understanding as well of who God is. I know it don't make no sense in the natural, but a person that has gone through what I'm saying, when you have gone through things, suffering for a while, you will understand that God is with you. That God is with you because you know that you shouldn't survive what you went through. And that you don't look like what you went through either. Like I said, hold on to God. Hold on to Him. Then, I just thought about too, when a lot of times God gives you an assignment, God comes to you and He chooses you. He decides to choose you because, a lot of times you be thinking, what? That God would choose you for a task that you don't think that you can accomplish. A lot of times we have that drawback spirit. We be like, no, not me, God. Not possibly, especially me talking to people. You talking about preaching to people. Not me. I could never see myself doing what I'm doing, but yet I'm doing it. And I just thought about Gideon. Gideon had that spirit. Moses was like that. Moses was not confident. None of them started off confident. And also Jeremiah. But if you read their stories, over time, their courage was developed. It was, a lot of times you're not going to be on a mountaintop in your faith. It comes through process. It comes through walking with God a lot of times. Now, some people, they just naturally have courage. But a lot of times people courage, it still have to be developed when it comes to the things of God. And over time, they accomplished great things for God. Therefore, they was able to overcome their weakness, In Revelation 12:11, it says they overcome by the word, the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. So you know that once you go through and you continue to walk God and not draw back, that on the other side of that you come out with a testimony. And so I just want to end this and say again, to take courage and to know that God is with you. Amen. Bye-bye for now.